day today, dog. Offense, great drive.
Go, go!
He's up. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to Training Camp Live, presented by Atlantic Health System.
Welcome to the first installment of Training Camp Live, presented by Atlantic Health. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, here on the balcony here at One Jets Drive. Training camp underway officially in the 2022 regular season. A beautiful 79 degrees, EA.
It's great to be out here with you, Greens. A lot of anticipation for what's ahead for the New York Jets after a very exciting offseason.
The offseason featured by a number of free agent signings, such as Pro Bowl additions like Laken Tomlinson. We'll see him out here for the first time in almost pads. Pads come on Monday. The Jets have an installation period where they're in shells from now through Saturday and off day Sunday, and then the real thing starts Monday. But, of course, I think a lot of eyes are going to feature the quarterback. We'll talk about Zach Wilson, but this is a totally new team compared to where we left it in 2022.
It really is, and I was talking to the coordinators about that as we led up to training camp. Brant Boyer, Jeff Ulbrich, of course, and Mike LaFleur. The personnel changes have been dramatic since January, since this staff coached up down some of the top collegiate stars down there in Mobile, Alabama. We saw that first in free agency, and we saw the plan come to fruition in the draft. You mentioned Laken Tomlinson, the #1 target in free agency. How about the job this production crew did with Flight 2022, taking people behind the scenes, and you saw what the Jets felt about him, but it goes on and on. Tyler Conklin at the tight end position, C.J. Uzomah. You had a dramatic overhaul there, of course. And then you flip to the defensive side of the ball, that's secondary. DJ Reed comes in, who started his career with Robert Saleh in San Francisco. Obviously, last year really took off with the Seattle Seahawks. Jordan Whitehead comes in, championship pedigree as well. So a group of veterans. And then you follow it up with a draft that I think a lot of experts would say, hey, the Jets aced it on paper.
Right now, taking a look at Robert Saleh and head strength and conditioning coach Mike Nicolini. With Saleh, EA, obviously, he looks a little bigger than he did at the end of the regular season last year. But let's start with this. This is year 2 for Robert Saleh. You spoke to all 3 coordinators. It's year 2 under this guy right here. What needs to be accomplished between now and the regular season that starts today on the practice field?
Well, Saleh looks like he's ready to play. You just mentioned it right there. I mean, dude's a big guy, less than 10% body fat, got the tan going. But, yeah, he looks like he could get out there right now. Of course, he played the tight end position collegiately. But when you're talking about Saleh and his staff, you have system familiarity. You have familiarity across the board because last year you were installing new systems. This year with Mike LaFleur, with Jeff Ulbrich, people know where they're going. And you bringing these offseason additions and the talent acquisitions, I just think your starting off point is a lot different. It's a lot further along than it was in 2021. There's no doubt about that.
I definitely agree with that. And this season, you got to take advantage of new ticket mini plan offerings to lock in great lower level seats starting at just $120 per game. You can catch 7 or 3 games at MetLife Stadium. Plus, you receive exclusive benefits. For more information to select your plan, visit nyjets.com/mini plans. All right, you're talking about Robert Saleh, the Jets right now, going through a little bit of a walkthrough before practice is underway here. But I don't want to ask your expectations, EA, but who are some players, and we're going to get into some positions here in a minute, that you're particularly focused on as we embark on training camp in 2022?
Well, you know, I like Saleh's shirt, positive vibes only, and that is the feel you get when you walk around One Jets Drive, that the Jets are going places. Last year was a starting point for this team, but the talent totally different. But as far as players under that spotlight, it's always got to be the quarterback, Zach Wilson, entering year 2. The expectations are going to be a lot different than they were his rookie season. He finished last year playing well down the stretch, protecting the football. What is his next step going to be? And then the Jets got huge news yesterday when 3 guys were activated to the roster. C.J. Uzomah, who started camp, I guess you would say, or started pre-camp on the PUP. Carl Lawson and Mekhi Becton.
Yeah.
Carl Lawson and Mekhi Becton. Becton played a few snaps in week 1 last year. So those guys were largely not on the field last year, of course. They could change the entire dynamic for both sides of the ball.
I think Carl Lawson, if you were to ask fans, is the most anticipated return among Jets in recent memory, because you remember what he did this time last year on the field. He was so dominant. To have his season end before it even began on a new team, it really did seem like he was primed to have a breakout season. And with Carl Lawson in particular, EA, first of all, he looks the same. He's still rocked up. Second of all, what I want to ask you as we're taking a look at Rod Middleton, by the way, talking about fashion statements, I love the bucket hat. It might not be that hot yet for the bucket hat, 79 degrees, but I think when it gets, cracks 90, I'm way in on the bucket.
What do you think about the camo hats? The camo on the bucket and also the camo baseball cap. Jeremy Ruckert out there, the Long Island native, standing to the right of Coach Middleton.
In the
there
camo
before.
hat? Yeah. I'm pro bucket hat. The camo, it hasn't grown on me yet.
Okay.
What about you?
I think there's a time and place.
There's a time and place. That's a good way to say it. Well, basically, going back to Carl Lawson, EA,
Yep.
his season ended before it began. He's still waiting to take his first regular season snap as a member of the Green and White. But with him, what makes him such a good fit in the system that you think from day one he was such a force on the practice field?
He was the best player last summer. So explosive, dynamic off the edge. The Jets are going to line up with those wide nines. It's going to be hard for a lot of offensive tackles to get their hands on this guy. And his motor is off the charts. And the thing about Lawson is he just does not rely on his unbelievable physical tools. He is a student of the game. He studies tackles. You know that he went throughout the offseason watching how guys approach their blocking and their systems. Carl Lawson is a guy who can't get enough football. He wants to be great. This is the system for him. Unfortunately, of course, he goes down last year in Green Bay. But if you have Carl Lawson on this team, this defense, you're going to be striking the fear of the heart of opposing offenses and coordinators, especially with what the Jets can do if they can win on the early downs, because this team is totally different up front 2022.
All right, well, let's just pivot talking about the defensive line for a minute here, because that is one of the most crowded rooms on this team as it stands. The Jets have 17 defensive linemen on their roster currently, as we're taking a look at Joe Douglas, the guy that put this roster together with all the free agent additions last year and this year. When you think about guys like Corey Davis and Carl Lawson coming back, and then adding guys in the draft to the defensive line like Jermaine Johnson, the 26th overall pick, that room is so crowded, and this is what training camp is all about. You put the pads on starting Monday after a ramp-up period. These will be more like mini camp practices, I would assume, and then we'll see who is on this 53-man roster after the summer, essentially.
So Aaron Whitecotton and Jeff Albrecht talked to me about it on the official pod that, hey, we're going to continue to favor a rotational approach. They don't want guys playing 60-plus snaps a game. They want to get to a point when you have to win in the fourth quarter that guys are not conserving energy earlier in the game to get to that point. They want people in the game, so where you're going to rotate in and they're just firing off the football. And the Jets have strength up front in terms of top-line talent, but the depth is dramatically better. We mentioned Lawson. Obviously, he could be a key for this defense, should be a key for this defense. You mentioned what they did in the draft with not only the aforementioned Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens, but how about free agency? Jacob Martin, under the radar signing. You also bring in Vinnie Curry, who did not play last year, rare blood disorder, but he's back out there on the practice field as well. So, and that's all going to benefit the guys on the inside, right? Quinnen Williams, he really impressed me yesterday when we talked to the media.
Yeah, me as well. And also another guy that's was added to the interior of this defensive line is Solomon Thomas, who
Yes.
also has familiarity from his days in San Francisco with Robert Saleh. And the pads come on Monday, like I said earlier. Practice starts today, but this Saturday, football is really back because you can celebrate on July 30th by watching the New York Jets take the field for the second annual Back Together Saturday, presented by Wilson. NFL Network has you covered with all-day coverage across the league on July 30th. Additional coverage both on ABC and ESPN. You know, we were talking about the defensive line, and obviously that's a storyline, but how about Zach Wilson in year 2? Because that's really where a lot of the eyes are going to go to. You think about what he did down the stretch last year, his final 6 games, 5 touchdowns through the air, a single interception, a solid spring, but this is really where you take that next step as a quarterback because the pads come on and really the bullets, quote-unquote, start to fly.
But I think it's fair to say he's already taken a step in the leadership category. He went on that nationwide tour of visiting with his teammates and working out with them and bonding. What did it start in Nashville, Tennessee with Corey Davis? Then he went down and we saw him with Braxton Berrios and company in Florida. Then you saw him with the guys in Arizona. In July, after these guys put some good work together here throughout OTAs, Zach Wilson invited them all out to Idaho, and they got together. So you're seeing the leadership. You're seeing a different guy in terms of the way he brings swagger to the table. That's what George Fant said in the spring. So, you know, if you're Zach Wilson, you're going at 1,000 miles per hour last year because you get drafted, you come to a new team, you're learning a new system, you're learning a new coaching staff. Everything has changed completely, and it's changed around him because the Jets have got better up front and they've gotten better at the skill position here throughout the offseason.
You know, and also when you think about rookies, just think about the pre-draft process right into your first NFL season. It's a grind, especially at the quarterback position where you have more information than any other position to do your job at a high level. Speaking of Zach Wilson's trip across America.
Yeah.
I was real jealous of the Idaho trip. I think that'd be awesome to go to Idaho. I'm also, you know, I also noticed that they played a beautiful looking golf course in Gaza Ranch.
Yeah, the ranch is right on the golf course, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's if I.
You
got
think
to
it was
choose,
Wilson's selection, or you think somebody
I don't
else
know.
picked?
No, I feel like it's got to emanate with the quarterback, right? It's got to be his selection.
But I also think if you're a good quarterback, which he is, and he's really liked inside that locker room, you ask the guys where they want to go to.
Yeah, that's fair. It was definitely a little different, but that's what I liked about it. It wasn't like a hotspot city like Nashville, Miami, Arizona. It was a little different. I bet you also the weather might have been a little cooler in Idaho at that time of year, like late June.
Yeah.
That would be my guess, early July. Well, regardless, you mentioned George Fant earlier. Just want to make this side note. He is the only player remaining on the physically unable to perform list. The Jets activated 3 players, Mekhi Becton, Carl Lawson, and C.J. Uzomah. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to practice immediately. However, they are cleared to practice.
They're cleared to practice, and,
Right.
and you mentioned from the get here is the Jets are not in pads until Monday. So there's going to be a gradual ramping up here under Robert Saleh and company. This is day 1.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, the other thing I want to say, moving from quarterbacks to cornerbacks, we talked about a lot of the players that Joe Douglas has brought in. Okay, wait, first of all, the headband is looking good in year 2, got to say. You a fan of the headband? Should we be wearing headbands on our next live show?
Do you want to? I don't know. I think you got to be yourself. If that's how you came into the industry, you were wearing a headband from a broadcast position, then wear it again. I don't know.
I don't think I've ever worn a headband, except maybe once when I was running.
So what do you think in terms of the swag meter? Wilson or Aaron Rodgers?
Well,
what about Rodgers' entrance to training camp? Who was he trying to be yesterday?
he was trying to be Nick Cage.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a certain. I'm surprised. Didn't I see you come in the facility like that today?
No.
Somebody else?
I don't even go home and throw my bag down like that. Yeah.
Wait.
The reason why I mentioned those two together is that they had joint practices last year, of course, and Wilson learned from watching him. And the Jets are going to go back to Green Bay this year and meet Aaron Rodgers and company here to to start an interesting 2-game road trip. You got the Packers, and then you're going to Denver to face Russell Wilson and the Broncos.
Yeah, that's
I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Yeah, we're not even in pads yet. We're talking about mid-season on a back-to-back 2-game. I guess would you call it West Coast? Not really, like Rocky Mountain Coast.
Well, you're just gradually working your way to the west, right? But the great thing about Wilson down the stretch is, and you mentioned it, he protected the football. He also can do damage with his legs. And Mike LaFleur said that, hey, he's a guy who can get me out of a bad play at times because he has a tremendous athleticism. But Wilson can play within the system because the guys around him, the Elijah Moores who had 5 touchdowns in 11 games last season. Corey Davis is back healthy. He was on pace for a 1,000-yard season. Braxton Berrios re-signed, of course. You add Garrett Wilson to the mix and the number 10 overall selection. Then in the backfield, Michael Carter had a great year, and then you draft Breece Hall in the 2nd round. We talked about the tight end position before with the aforementioned Uzama and Conklin. I mean, you have pieces. The dynamic has changed here at One Jets Drive.
It has. I think the excitement right now around this team is a lot bigger than what it was last year, and even years prior to that, and largely in part of that guy right there that we see, number 1, Sauce Gardner. Think about the cornerbacks room, where that position was as we wrapped up the 2021 season with Bryce Hall and Brandon Echols starting, and then you add in DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner and those guys, Michael Carter II. That cornerbacks room, I'm very interested to see how it's going to play out because Bryce Hall and Brandon Echols are 2 very solid players, and they got valuable experience. How quickly is that room going to come together? And that might be the room that has the best overhaul among anybody.
I like the depth of the position. I like the approach that we're hearing from DJ Reed yesterday. Like, how about DJ Reed coming out and saying, hey, it's a time to flip the switch. It's time to flip the switch. And he's ready to go. This is a guy who's all business as he starts his first training camp with the New York Jets. We're watching the guys get warmed up right now. But you mentioned Sauce Gardner before. Albrecht said to me, he does not make the same mistake twice. That's a rookie.
We were talking about the physically unable to perform list earlier. Well, the one guy that was on the list, no longer, George Fant, officially active, which means that the Jets no longer have any players on the physically unable to perform list.
This is huge.
The competition at left tackle, it is officially underway between Fant and Becton.
It is. And the good news, though, is if both of these guys come out of camp unscathed, that you're going to be in good shape at left tackle and you're going to be in good shape at right tackle because the guy who's not the left tackle is going to line up at the right spot. And think about where the Jets are at the interior position this year. They think they have, if not the best, one of the best guard combinations in football in Laken Tomlinson and Elijah Vera Tucker. And the underrated Connor McGovern's got to be feeling pretty good with both of those guys to his left and right.
What did you think about AVT saying yesterday that he hung out with Laken Tomlinson in the offseason in the Northern California region? You love to see that.
I love this team. I think the fans are really going to like this team because in an AVT, you're talking about a guy who's not a prima donna at all. He had a good year 1, but they asked him to move over to right guard, and he said, yeah, anything that's going to help the team. And then he says, hey, maybe I can meet with Tomlinson and pick his brain throughout the offseason before we get back to training camp. That speaks to character and culture, and the culture is building here. They got a good vibe. It's a good vibe. It's just a start. And C.J. Mosley, the wise philosopher here, the defensive captain, said yesterday, hey, we got to put in the work each day. And this is step 1 of the journey.
And you know what? I think that does say a lot about Elijah Vera Tucker. He also said that he practiced reps at left guard just because in the NFL you never know, and that just speaks to who Elijah Vera Tucker is. This offensive line, EA, really has potential, and I understand that there's a competition between that guy, the big ticket, 77.
He looked good coming in yesterday, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, he did. He looks good right now. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen with Mekhi Becton because here's the thing. A lot of the storylines last year about Mekhi, they were what they were. We never saw him in the regular season outside of less than 50 snaps at Carolina week 1. And so it's kind of like, it's in a way, it's kind of like Carl Lawson. It's like a what if. I understand that Carl Lawson had the best training camp out of any Jet, and that predominantly came at the expense sometimes of Mekhi Becton on the left side. But that's not to say that Mekhi Becton, if you got to remember, in 2020, in the COVID year, didn't really have a natural training camp or preseason, and he just steps out left tackle week 1, and he played well in more games than not.
Yeah, make no mistake about it. He heard from the doubters, the skeptics. He came out in mandatory minicamp with a big bus shirt on there. And he said, all the critics, what they're saying, he hears it, it's going to add more fuel to my fire. And congratulations to Mekhi Becton.
Absolutely.
Obviously now a new dad, and I think that's going to give him even extra motivation. But George Fant, he's going to be up for that battle at the left tackle position. He likes playing left tackle. He played well there last year. You could be in a really good position at the tackle position and all along the offensive line. Again, it starts up front. That's how Joe Douglas wanted to build this team. We've seen it come together in coordination, in conjunction with what Robert Saleh and his staff want to do. There is unison here.
George Fant's Pro Football Focus numbers, depending on the metric, were top 5 in the league, sometimes as high as top 3. He had a very good year at left tackle. And the good news, to your point, George Fant and Mekhi Becton both have experience at right tackle. Mekhi Becton at Louisville, George Fant throughout his career with the Seahawks, and his first year with the New York Jets. And if you want to see any of those guys, or basically you want to come out to a practice, how about the annual Green and White back at MetLife Stadium Saturday, August 6th. You can join the team under the lights for a night full of football, family, and fun. You can download your free mobile tickets today at nyjets.com/camp. The Green and White scrimmage is supported by Atlantic Health System, JetBlue, and MetLife. That's always one of the most fun practices of the year.
Yeah, and we're talking about the anticipation. You know, fans are ready for the season to start, but that's always a cool night out for the family. And I think the team really enjoys it. It's kind of, you feel like football is just around the corner. And remember, you only have 3 preseason games. The Jets have 2 joint practices this year, 2 sessions with the Atlanta Falcons, who are coming here to One Jets Drive, and then you'll see the Crosstown Giants, who are pretty much in year 1 of their transition rebuild, where the Jets are a little bit further along right now.
That's right. And taking a look at the defensive line right now, we mentioned it earlier, one of, if not the most crowded room on this team. 17 defensive linemen. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. There's some open competition, I would say, when you think about the interior guys in particular.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, right? Because Lorenzo Fatukasi was a mainstay here for a while in the middle. A run plugger. He signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars in free agency. You mentioned Solomon Thomas, the familiarity. These guys know what they're getting with him, being from San Francisco. Most recently, of course, he played with the Las Vegas Raiders, but the Jets are getting a former top 5 pick in Solomon Thomas. Jonathan Marshall, I think, is a guy we shouldn't sleep on him here during training camp, right? Year 2, an athletic freak himself. Sheldon Rankins, he's out there on the field. So Rankins, proven veteran in the National Football League, he can provide that penetration on the inside, and quarterbacks don't like to step up. And then Quinnen Williams could be poised for a big year.
I think this is the best supporting cast around Quinnen Williams since he was drafted 3rd overall in 2019 by the Green and White. But let me ask you this. Can I get ahead of myself for a minute here?
Yeah,
Make
of course.
A wild
of course,
comparison?
but you got mad at me for talking about the Packers and Broncos.
I did. I do feel like I'm throwing stones a little bit here.
What are we going to look at the key matchup between the Jets and Ravens?
Not quite yet. What I was going to do was I'm not going to say.
Man, I'm so pumped to watch Lawson. We're watching him on the screen right now.
EA's jacked up over here. I'm excited too, but I want to say this about Jonathan Marshall. And the blueprint is there for him. He has the opportunity. He's an athletic freak. He almost has a similar path, or could be on a similar path, to the guy you talked about in Lorenzo Fatukasi, right? Both 6th-round picks, both year 1 only appeared in 1 or 2 games maximum. Now you have an opportunity to see what you got. Foley took advantage of that, and he got paid out in free agency.
Yeah.
Now, Jonathan Marshall, not quite there yet, but he definitely has an opportunity to make some noise here in training camp. So we'll see what happens with the defensive line. Other crowded positions as well.
No, we're looking at one.
Yeah, that's right. The quarterback position. Not only do the Jets have Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and Mike White, they signed yesterday Chris Streveler, who started his career with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Oh, it's CFL, huh? You dropping some CFL knowledge on me?
Oh, yeah.
You wrote the article. I didn't realize how many games he appeared in while he was under Cliff Kingsbury and company.
Yep,
with
that's where he got his NFL start.
Yeah, the Arizona Cardinals.
That's right. And he also, in Winnipeg, with the CFL, he was a dual-threat quarterback. He had over 1,000 rushing yards. And you know what? We'll see what happens. This is a crowded quarterback room. I'm sure Joe Douglas has a reason behind the decision, but I'm curious to see what happens. And especially what I'm curious about in terms of rep split, how much obviously Zach Wilson is going to get the majority of the reps. How's Joe Flacco and Mike White's reps going to be split? Now add Streveler to the mix too, because Joe Flacco's a wily vet. It's not like he needs a ton of reps. Also, by the way, Joe Flacco, going to Idaho, love that. He went to Idaho with the boys.
Yeah, it's a good dude. Hey, listen. So we're watching Wilson right now, and we're watching him operate from the pocket, taking some snaps out of the shotgun. What I'd like to say about him too, as we think about quarterbacks entering year 2, is that he did some damage with his legs last year.
Yeah, particularly later in the year.
Yeah.
In that final 6 games since he returned from injury, or 7 games, starting in Houston.
Yeah, and you're talking about the rush touchdown production. So I think he had 4. Is that correct? Or did he end up with 5 last year?
I think he ended up with 5.
So he ended up with 5 touchdowns, and then he had the ridiculous performance on the ground against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah,
where
awesome.
we were setting records. And I'm not saying that's going to happen every week for you. But with that being said, is that the guys were saying yesterday he's got elite arm talent.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's asked about him and where he's at, his mindset. Everybody likes his mindset and his leadership qualities and where he's going as far as his headspace is concerned. But this guy is an elite athlete, and I think people shouldn't sleep on what he can do with his feet.
I definitely agree with that. I'm curious to see how comfortable he will be if he sees space on the ground, and maybe he'll just be a little quicker to pull the trigger to run the ball if he sees if let's say he sees 5 to 10 yards and he doesn't really see anything through the air. It'll be interesting to see. We have a couple minutes left on the show.
We're watching these guys work on some rollouts here right now.
We have a couple minutes left before we wrap up here on our first installment of Training Camp Live presented by Atlantic Health. But what I want to focus on, and I know we'll talk about this throughout, just a couple guys that maybe we didn't talk a lot about in the spring that you got an eye on. Like 2 guys really, same position, Jason Pinnock, Ashton Davis. And obviously LaMarcus Joyner's back in the fold as well. He sustained a season-ending injury the same game as Mekhi Becton at Carolina. But that safeties room, EA, right now, 9 guys on the roster right now. Pinnock, they love his athletic ability.
Yep.
This is his first training camp as a safety for the New York Jets.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It speaks to the depth that Joe Douglas and company have built here. A guy who had a very impressive spring, both offensively and on special teams, former college quarterback Jeff Smith.
Yeah.
When we think about the receivers, yes, we're talking about the frontline guys, and rightfully so. But Jeff Smith's a guy who's got speed, got some wheels, and he can do some business. I like the spring that he put out there, and I think we got a wrap. I'm being told.
Yeah, we're getting there. Training camp is underway officially here at One Jets Drive, the first training camp practice of 2020.
Jordan Whitehead, we didn't even talk about him.
That's what
I guess that's going to be Saturday.
That's
we
right.
We got a surprise for you on Saturday. Caroline Hendershot will be back, and then we'll have somebody else as well.
All right, so Saturday, make sure to tune in to Training Camp Live presented by Atlantic Health. That was the first installment. We'll be back Saturday. Thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the weather. Make sure to get outside if you can.
Sunscreen.